morning, good afternoon or good evening to you wherever you are in the world. My name is Meg and I am a fully qualified yoga teacher, a masseuse and a beautician as well. And this is my little channel where I talk about yoga, tips and tricks, things that you guys can do from home, but I'll also talk about little health and wellness things as well. Basically everything I do in my job every single day. So I wanted to do a video today really quickly on what yoga actually is. I feel like I've been posting a lot about like different things with yoga and often referring to things like the 8 limbs of yoga, but I haven't actually gone through what that is. So just to kind of clear up a little bit of confusion, and whether you're someone who's been practicing yoga for years and years, or maybe you're new to it and new to practicing, this video might share a little bit of light on something that you didn't even know anyway. I know that it was a worryingly long time that I was doing yoga before I actually realized what yoga was. I was about 13 when I started becoming interested in yoga, and my mum had a yoga book and I used to follow that, and for years and years and years I thought that that was what yoga was, and then I kind of had like a mind blown moment when I realized that actually everything I'd been learning was just one tiny part of yoga. So I'm not going to go too much into the history of yoga. We know it began in India about 5,000 years ago. It was originally, yoga was something where you just sat and you didn't do any postures, so you were just sitting and it was all in the mind, and then it changed into almost meditating whilst you're in a posture, and then it changed from that to becoming what a lot of people know today as yoga, so like yoga asana, the physical practice of yoga, and then that then changed into vinyasa flow, so moving whilst doing yoga at the same time. It's all yoga, but one thing that I think has been missing, especially in Western yoga, is that the yoga asana part is just one tiny part. You have so many other bits to it. So before yoga came to England or the Western world, America, Hollywood, that's kind of where it first originated in the Western world, and then it kind of traveled over. So there was someone called Patanjali who basically decided that there was like an 8-limb system to yoga. So for me personally, when I think about yoga and the yoga theory, I think of the 8 limbs of yoga, but then I also add a top one in as well. So a lot of yogis will start off with something called Shatkarma, which is detoxing the body. Now, original Shatkarma, their practices are just a little bit too crazy for me. I'm sure there are people out there now that still do it, but I don't know. Like, they do things like swallow fabric and then pull it back out of their mouth to kind of like purge, and they do some very, very like serious detoxing, which I'm not sure personally is maybe the most healthiest thing to do, but each their own if that's what yogis want to do. If you're going to do any Shatkarma, I would highly recommend doing it with a guru with you, and just do your research before you do it and do like your own version. So I do my own version of Shatkarma. I do celery every day, I drink lemon water, I try and get a sweat on, so I'll exercise every day, I get fresh air, like all these things, hot baths, hot showers, saunas, anything like eating a healthy diet, drinking plenty of water, anything that's kind of classed as what we see in modern day as detoxing. That's what I kind of incorporate in. From your Shatkarma, which I've added in, you then have your 8 limbs of yoga. So these 8 limbs can be done together if you are quite a serious yogi, or you can just take parts of it, which I think a lot of people do nowadays, is they tend to just focus on the asana part, so the physical practice of yoga, and they're not so worried about the other bits, which is fine. There's absolutely no problems with that at all. I'm not gonna judge you. That's where I started out, and that's where I was for a very long time. And if you're someone that's looking at losing weight or just gaining flexibility and strength, and that's all you're worried about, yoga asanas, the physical practice of yoga, perfect. Like, just do that. If that's your thing, go for it. But you have got your yamas and niyamas, which are your first 2 kind of points, and these reflect on like your self-study, cleanliness, That's niyama. Yamas are things like telling the truth, not being violent. So yama is the first of the 8 limbs of yoga, and it deals with one's ethical standards, a sense of integrity and focusing on behaviour and how we conduct ourselves. I've just read that and I really like that. Niyama, you're sort of thinking a little bit more about meditations and becoming like more grounded, whether that's through going to church, meditating, praying, whatever kind of for you makes you more of a grounded, like mindful person. And so yamas and niyamas are something that you don't just kind of sit there and go, oh, okay, well, I just won't lie. Like, for me, I think it's something that you sit and you ponder throughout your life, really. They're things that you always think about. I mean, I will sit in a morning pretty much every single day and I will ponder and think about yama and niyama. Your next limb of yoga is then your asana practice, which is the physical practice of yoga. Now, whether you go to a class and you learn Ashtanga, or whether you learn yin yoga, vinyasa, whatever you're doing, if you're moving and doing different postures in your class, then that means that you are practicing asana yoga. I'm only really going to lightly touch on asana because most of my YouTube is based on asana practice anyway, especially right now at the moment. Your next limb of yoga is then pranayama. Pranayama is different breathing exercises which yogis believe actually help to prolong your life and rejuvenate your body. So I do pranayama, I love pranayama. It just kind of helps to clear the body, clear the mind. It actually helps with concentration when you go into meditation as well, because you're continually thinking about what you're doing with your breathing. And I'd like to add that to asana as well, because you're constantly thinking about what your body is doing, your mind doesn't wander, so you become very mindful, you become in that moment, which is what meditation is all about. And pranayama is the same thing. So pranayama, you're focusing on your breath. It's different breath exercises, different breath techniques that you can bring into your practice, and they help to get oxygen into the body, they help to like rejuvenate everything, they help with like expanding the lungs. Often anyone who kind of suffers with a bit of asthma or hay fever, allergies, things like that, from what I've seen from teaching pranayama, it's actually made such a positive difference. That being said, if you do have any medical issues or underlying health conditions and you want to try pranayama, it would be the same as asana. You know, if you're somebody who suffers with lightheadedness and passing out, for example, like you might have really low blood pressure, probably check with your doctor before you start going to like a really intense asana class. Same thing with pranayama. You know, if you're someone who suffers very easily with migraines, for example, I probably would be very cautious going into pranayama. Do it with a guru there, with a teacher there, or just talk to your doctor first and let them kind of do a little bit of research before they say yay or nay to you practicing. The 5th limb is pratyahara, and this is all about shutting out external stimuli. So as you're meditating, as you're sitting, you're basically shutting everything out, noises, sounds, smell, shutting it out and focusing completely internally on yourself. I'm actually going to read an example of the next limb, which is dharana, because I really like how this has kind of been explained. And also personally with my practice, I'm not advanced enough yet, I would say, in dharana to give a really solid explanation that I feel kind of like comfortable with. So this is from theyogajournal.com. As each stage prepares us for the next, the practice of pratyahara creates the setting for dharana, or concentration. Having relieved ourselves from outside distractions, we can now deal with the distractions of the mind itself. No easy task. In the practice of concentration, which precedes meditation, we learn how to slow down the thinking process by concentrating on a single mental object. So you'll sit and you'll, for example, concentrate on like a candle being lit and then just focusing on that flame, and your whole attention goes onto that one thing, and you just shut everything off from around you and you'll focus on that one thing. although in asana and pranayama we are focusing that meditation and that focusing what our mind is doing, it does tend to shift and it does travel a little bit. When you then come from that into pratyahara and then dharana, your focus is a lot more like intensely shifted on what is going on exactly there in that moment, whether it's in yourself in pratyahara or dharana, maybe focusing on one sound, focusing on one thing like a candle or a light, maybe focusing on a deity if that's how you practice your yoga, if you like to bring your religion into yoga. But that is dharana. Your 7th stage is dhyana. You are keenly aware without focus. Dharana, you are focusing on one specific thing and you're drawing that attention continually to that one thing. Dhyana, you are focusing your attention on nothing. So this is like your first stage of like deep meditation. When people think about meditation, I think this is what they think is instantly what you're expected to do. So you basically sit with few to no thoughts in your head. Every time your mind wanders, you bring it straight back to nothing. You don't focus your body on anything, you focus it on nothing, and you just try and keep your head empty, try and keep everything as calm and as quiet as you can, shut everything out around you and just focus on nothing. The last of your 8 limbs of yoga is samadhi, which is basically finding enlightenment. Like when the Buddha describes sitting under a tree and finding enlightenment, that's basically very similar to what samadhi is. It's basically being in a full moment of ecstasy. So all through meditation. Samadhi is very much for the elite yogis. Some people will never reach samadhi. These 8 limbs of yoga, it's not something that you have to like. You have to do each one and they have to be perfect. You have to finish each one. They are a process that you kind of go through as your life goes through. You continually ponder them, you continually practice them, and maybe as you gain a little bit, you know, more expertise in one, you can then start transitioning into the other. What you never really stop learning each one. You know, someone who's practicing pratyahara is probably still thinking about their yamas and niyamas, and anyone who's working in asana is probably still going to be doing dhyana. They kind of all work together. You don't do one and then go, okay, tick, done, and then go on to the next one. It's a continual way of just going along, but obviously contemplating and thinking about your life and how you can be a better person, which is kind of what niyama is a lot easier to do than finding enlightenment and being like so advanced in meditation that you can sit there for like 24 hours and just shut off completely. So I personally am a yoga teacher, and I personally am definitely not up to a high point in anything when it comes to the meditation side. It's something I'm continually practicing. I'm only in my early 20s at the moment, so it's something that I will always work with. But I do think it is important that if you're someone who's interested in yoga and you're starting to study yoga a little bit more, maybe you're really enjoying your asana practice, I think it's important that you know what else there is, and that isn't just yoga. I have so many people who talk to me and they'll say things like, oh, I'm doing a fitness class and at the end we do yoga, but the teacher's not trained in yoga. And I go, oh, okay, so what do you do? And they go, oh, we just spend some time stretching. It's not really yoga, that's stretching. And there's a difference, because in yoga you are, yes, in some cases moving, yes, in some cases breathing, some cases you're in full meditation, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. Yoga is not movement, yoga is in the mind. Yoga is about becoming into that moment, focusing on yourself, focusing on your body, your mental health, your brain, your spirituality. It's about bringing all of that together, and that is what yoga is. Yoga is not just simply sitting there and stretching your body out a little bit. Yoga asana, I guess in some way is that, but if you're not kind of thinking and being in the moment, moving your body and just making sure everything is kind of perfect in that moment, like don't let your mind wander off. When you're on the mat, you think about what is happening on the mat. You don't, as a yogi, you try not to come into your yoga practice and sit there and think, oh, well, you know, while you're practicing a vinyasa flow or sun salutations, you don't sit there and think, oh, what am I going to cook for dinner, or what should I do after this? You're thinking about each movement and how it works, and that is what yoga is. It's not just moving and that's it. So I hope this clears a few things up. If you're someone, like I said, who's just started out with yoga, this is going to be really key to learning, and it's going to help elevate your practice in future. And if you're someone who's been doing yoga asana, or maybe just one of those parts of yoga for quite a while, it might encourage you to feel like you can move on and try and maybe experiment and try different things within the realms of yoga. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Any questions you've got, please comment, leave me a comment below. I'm always happy to answer questions as best I can. If I can't help you, I'm sure I can find you someone who can. A really good yoga podcast to follow is Let's Talk Yoga by Arundhati. I absolutely love this yoga podcast. She talks to so many brilliant yogis who have been basically studying it their entire lives, some of them since they were children. A lot of them grew up in India as well, so it's basically been surrounded by them their entire lives, and she is a brilliant teacher. So maybe go and have a look at that if you want to learn a little bit more about the philosophy of yoga. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Bye.